Revenge films.
My name is Sarah. I'm a full-time housewife, and I live with my husband, Steven, and our 1-year-old daughter, Emily. We live close to Steven's parents' house, and my mother-in-law would often come over to our house. But to me, that was a bit troublesome. My mother-in-law was a self-proclaimed chef, and she would always come over and complain about my cooking and belittle my dishes. My husband would always take his mother's side, and he would often say how his mother's cooking was the most delicious in the world. That being said, it wasn't like I was bad at cooking at all, and every day I was putting in a lot of effort into cooking meals for my family. In reality, my parents actually owned a famous Japanese restaurant in their hometown. My father had also been an apprentice to a very famous chef who was well known around the country, and my father himself had made a few appearances on cooking shows on TV, and he was a little bit of a celebrity himself. I also had a certification as a chef, but I didn't want to hurt the ego of my mother-in-law, so I kept it a secret from her. Then one day, as usual, my mother-in-law suddenly showed up at the door around the time I was about to feed my daughter her baby food. "Hello!" "Oh, hello, ma'am. What's the matter showing up here out of nowhere? Please do come in. Is something wrong?" "I was bored, so I wanted to come see my granddaughter. Thanks for letting me in." "Oh, I see. I was just about to feed Emily and her baby food." "Interesting. Did you make that yourself?" "Yes, today. I boiled some fresh pumpkin for Emily." My mother-in-law grabbed the plate of pumpkin out of my hands and without even asking, had a taste of my daughter's baby food. "Oh my goodness, what is this? I can't believe you would feed something this disgusting to your daughter. You're a failure as a mother." As she said that, without asking my permission, my mother-in-law started to add flavors into my daughter's baby food. "Ma'am, this is still baby food, so please don't add too many ingredients into it." "How rude of you! Are you saying that you don't trust my ability and taste? If you have some complaints or are unsatisfied, then I'm never going to cook for you ever again." "It's not that I have any complaints, it's just that for baby food, it's very standard practice to not add many ingredients and keep it simple." "You know already that I'm studying to become a food researcher right now. I've already contracted some suppliers in order to publish cooking books soon as well, you know. And for you to try to belittle me about my cooking, you've got some nerve, young woman. "But you're the one that tried to belittle me and my cooking in the first place." "Shut your mouth. From now on, I'm going to be making my granddaughter's food. You keep your mouth shut and back off." My mother-in-law was furious as she snapped at me and stormed out of my house. For a moment, I didn't know what had just happened and I was at a loss for words. I decided to try and talk to my husband about it. When he came home that night from work, as soon as my husband saw me, he started yelling at me.
"Hey, I heard from my mom! How dare you try to belittle my mother's cooking! You really hurt my mom and offended her!"
"You heard that from your mom? It's a misunderstanding. I had no intention of belittling your mom's cooking whatsoever."
"Do you enjoy bullying your mother-in-law? More than a mother like you that feeds our daughter such terrible food, I'm sure it's going to be better for Emily to have my mom's cooking anyway. From now on, I'm going to be having dinner at my mom's house, and I'm taking Emily with me."
Starting the next day, my husband came home from work, but then he would take our daughter and actually left the house for dinner. Every day, I was left eating dinner by myself at home, and little by little, I would start to feel anger towards my husband and his mother boiling inside me. We were supposed to build a warm and happy family together, but I was left all alone at the home. I never could have imagined that I would be eating dinner alone by myself every night. If this was going to be the case, then I started to think that maybe I should get a divorce. As I was eating dinner, I started to think about how my mother-in-law was the one who belittled my cooking in the first place, and I couldn't understand why I had to be the one feeling this way. The more I thought about it, the more I couldn't sit by and do nothing. Then one day for dinner, I decided to go with my husband to Emily in my in-laws' house, and I vowed to get revenge. By the time we arrived at their house, the dinner preparations were already complete, and there was a pot in the kitchen with the stew already made. I looked for a moment when nobody else was in the kitchen, and just like she had done with me without my permission, I decided to go ahead and add some ingredients to my mother-in-law's cooking. I quietly dumped a massive amount of sugar into the pot, and after I stirred it and closed the lid, my mother-in-law came waltzing into the kitchen without noticing anything that I had done. She started placing the portions on a plate and laid out the food on the table. I started to imagine what was about to happen next, and my heart was racing at the dinner table. And then the moment that everybody ate the stew with a massive amount of sugar in it, everybody started to complain.
"What the hell is this? How's anybody supposed to eat this? This is disgusting! Mom, what did you put into the stew?"
Mother-in-law didn't know what was going on, and she started to panic. And then she looked at my face and glared at me and said, "Are you trying to get back at me?" I calmly replied, "I'm only doing to you what you already did to me." As soon as they heard my words, my husband and his mother lost it and were furious at me. But at that moment, I grabbed the divorce papers I had already prepared and shoved it in their faces. "I've already had enough. Please sign this. I'm done." Everybody there was shocked, and they were at a loss for words as I walked away from the table. I was no longer able to stand it, so I grabbed my daughter and I ran out of the house and decided to evacuate to my parents' place. By the time I arrived at my parents' house, it was already late at night, and when they saw their daughter and granddaughter, they recognized that something had happened and they listened to my story. When I told them everything that happened until then, both of my parents were furious. The next day, they went straight to my in-laws' house and barged in. However, instead of apologizing, my mother-in-law and husband tried to bite back to my parents.
You should be embarrassed as parents to offer up a daughter like that who doesn't even know how to cook. It's because she can't even provide proper meals for the family that this happened.
He spoke the most unbelievable words at my parents. My father usually has a very calm personality. Then, when he heard that, he decided to logically give them his opinion.
As somebody who has worked hard as a chef my entire life, that's the most disappointing thing I have ever heard. I deeply regret that I allowed my daughter to marry into a family that would speak of her cooking like this. And there is no way that I will be giving my daughter back to a family like that.
My parents didn't even raise their voices as they quietly expressed their anger and left Stephen's family's house. After that, I spoke at length with my parents about it and ultimately decided to get a divorce from Stephen. We hired a lawyer and I decided to collect a settlement fee of the emotional abuse as well as the child support fees.
This is unbelievable that you would try to get a divorce over something this small!
He said as he tried to deny the divorce, but until the very end he continued to take his mother's side and divorce was finalized. Emily and I moved back into my parents' home, and knowing how busy my parents were with running the restaurant, I started to help out with the courses and the cooking at home. As I was living my life like this, time flew by, and before I knew it, 1 year had already passed since I got a divorce. Then one day, my father received a phone call from a magazine journalist that he had a relationship with for many years over. According to him, he said that the person who wanted to learn about my father's techniques and become an apprentice with him in order to become a food researcher, so my father invited them to his restaurant. A few days after, the journalist arrived at the restaurant with a woman who was trying to become a food researcher. And the person who arrived at the restaurant was, to everybody's shock, my former mother-in-law. When she saw my father's face, she was shocked. "The famous chef and Japanese food expert was you?" she muttered, and she awkwardly tried to back out.
Oh, do you two know each other? This lady here is going to be publishing a cooking book with our company soon. It's the plan. And we thought that if we could include in the book that she learned how to cook with you, sir, then it would cause quite the stir and help boost the reputation of the book. She's quite the skilled cook, so we came here to please ask for your support.
As the journalist explained the situation to my father standing next to him, my former mother-in-law only became more and more pale. Seeing this, my father-in-law let out a big sigh and eventually opened his mouth.
This woman here only knows how to belittle other people's cooking, so there's nothing for me to teach her here. What? What do you mean by that? I'm terribly sorry, but please do show yourselves out of the restaurant.
That's all he said, as he kicked the former mother-in-law out. According to the journalist, my mother-in-law was really excited about publishing a cooking book. But because my father was well known in the industry and news spread about her getting kicked out of my father's restaurant, the book deal turned to dust. When the journalist eventually came back to my father's restaurant, he asked what happened on that day. So he explained the relationship he had with my former mother-in-law and the reason why he was angry that day. And then the journalist's response was,
"Even though she may be a good cook, with that personality, there's no way that she can succeed. What a shame and a waste."
As he said that, he vowed that he would never have any sort of business relationship with my former mother-in-law ever again. She did this all to herself. But I heard that my mother-in-law was just about to have her dream come true, and then all of it came crashing down, and she fell into depression. My former mother-in-law was relying on the sales from the book, and had fronted the settlement payment fees for me and Stephen. But when she found out that she wouldn't be receiving any money, she went back to Stephen to collect all the fees from him. However, my ex-husband already had all of his hands full with paying child support fees, as well as the loan on the house, and he didn't have anything to spare at that time. But he declined paying back to her. The relationship fell apart. In the end, after getting into a massive argument about money, Stephen was disowned by his mother, and was going to be left out of the family for the rest of his life. As for me, while helping my father with his restaurant, I started to introduce my recipes on social media. By the time I realized it, I had become a famous food influencer that was popular amongst other moms. With the encouragement of the journalist, I was given a book deal to publish my own cookbook, and even though I was still living with my parents, I was able to get back on my own feet and make my life for myself. When I got a divorce, I was nervous about how to live my life in the future, but I was able to regain my confidence when I started earning money for myself, and now I can provide for my family as a single mother. From now on, I want to look at my previous life positively and work hard in raising my daughter and my job in making delicious food.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.